I got this from a woman in Wichita, Kansas, who asked me not to use her real name or the name of the building. She said what bothered her most wasn't the knocking, it was the part that came after. You can call me Aaron. At the time this happened, I was 31, living alone in a one-bedroom apartment on the 3rd floor of an older brick building on the east side of Wichita. Nothing fancy. 4 floors, 1 narrow stairwell, a small parking lot in the back, and those heavy apartment doors that always sound louder at night than they do in the daytime. This happened on February 18th, 2024, a Sunday night. I remember the date because I had work the next morning and I almost called in over this, which is not something I do. I'm a pretty rational person. I live alone, so I'm used to normal apartment noises, pipes, doors, people coming in late, someone dropping something above you at 1 in the morning and then pretending they didn't. This didn't feel like that. I woke up at 1:14 a.m. to knocking, not pounding, not somebody trying to break the door down. Just 3 knocks, evenly spaced. I was out of bed before I was fully awake, just sitting up and listening. My room was dark except for the digital clock on the dresser. 1:14, red numbers. I remember that weirdly clearly. Then it came again. 3 knocks, same rhythm. My first thought was that somebody had the wrong apartment. That happens in older buildings more than people think, especially on weekends. People drink, they get turned around, they go to 3B instead of 4B, stuff like that. I put my feet on the floor and just sat there for a second listening. Nothing. No voice. No footsteps. No sorry. That was the first thing that felt off. Usually, if somebody knocks on the wrong door that late, they're already half apologizing before you even get there. I got up and walked into the living room. My apartment wasn't big. Bedroom, short hallway, bathroom on the left, living room and kitchen together. From my bedroom to the front door was maybe 15 steps. I know because later that night I counted them twice. I didn't turn on the main light. I just went to the door and looked through the peephole. There was someone standing out there. A man, I think. Tall, maybe 6 feet or a little over. Dark jacket, hood up. His head was angled down in a way that made the hood hide most of his face. But what really got me was that one of his hands was up near his cheek like he was holding something there. At first, I thought it was a phone. Then I realized it looked more like he was covering part of his face, not casually, deliberately, like he knew exactly where the peephole was and didn't want me getting a clear look. I stayed completely still. I didn't make a sound. I just remember my mouth going dry immediately. Not fear exactly, not yet. More like my body clocked something before my brain did. He didn't knock again right away. He just stood there, not swaying, not checking his phone, not looking up and down the hall like a normal person waiting for someone to answer. Just facing my door with one side of his face hidden. I backed away without thinking and checked my phone. No texts, no missed calls. Nobody I knew would ever come by that late without warning me. I looked through the peephole again maybe 15 seconds later. He was still there. Same position. That was when I said through the door, "You have the wrong apartment." I tried to sound annoyed, not scared. He didn't answer. I waited. Nothing. I said it again, a little louder. Still nothing. I don't know how long he stayed there. It felt long. It was probably under 2 minutes. But when you're staring through a peephole at somebody who refuses to move or speak, time gets weird. Then finally he stepped back. Not all the way, just one slow step. And for a second I thought maybe he was leaving. Instead, he turned his head toward the stairwell at the end of the hall like he heard something. Then he walked that way and disappeared out of view. I stayed at the door longer than I should have. I kept expecting to hear the stairwell door open, or footsteps going down, or something. I heard none of that. That building carried sound in a very specific way. You could hear the front entrance downstairs. You could hear when people took the trash out. You could hear when somebody came up the steps with boots on. But I didn't hear him go down. I told myself he must have gone up. That was logical. That was the first explanation I gave myself. Wrong apartment. Weird guy. Maybe drunk. Maybe embarrassed. Went upstairs instead. I actually started going back to bed after that. Then I heard screaming above me. Not a long scream. One short one. Cut off. It came from the apartment directly over mine. I froze in the hallway. The apartment above me had been empty for a little over a week. I knew that for a fact because the woman who lived there moved out at the beginning of the month, and maintenance had been in and out of the place for days after. I had complained actually because they were dragging furniture across the floor at like 8 in the morning. So I knew it was empty. I knew that. And still, right after that scream, I heard what sounded like something heavy hitting the floor. Then another hit. Then a dragging noise. I just stood there for a full minute doing nothing. I wish I could tell you I immediately called 911, but I didn't. My brain was trying way too hard to make it ordinary. Maintenance. Somebody checking the unit. A TV somewhere. Sound traveling weird through the vents. Anything. Then came 3 hard knocks from overhead. Not from a door. From the floor above me. Like somebody kneeling down and hitting the floorboards directly. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 again. That changed the feeling immediately, because it sounded intentional. It sounded placed. I looked up like that was going to help. Then I did call 911. My hands were steady, which is the weird part. My hands were completely fine. The rest of me wasn't. I told the operator I thought somebody might be in the vacant unit above mine. I said I heard screaming and banging. She asked if I knew for sure the apartment was empty. I said yes. She asked if I could hear anything now. I listened. Nothing. Nothing at all. It went so quiet that I actually started feeling stupid while I was still on the phone. Like I was overreacting to some normal building noise at 1 in the morning. Then, while I was answering one of her questions, there was a soft knock at my door. Just one. I stopped talking. The operator said, "Ma'am?" Then 2 more knocks. Light. Careful. Not like before. I felt everything in my chest just drop. I whispered, "He's back." She told me not to open the door, obviously. Asked if I could see him safely. I went to the peephole again, slower this time. Every light in the hall was on. Yellowish overhead bulbs, that ugly apartment lighting that makes everything feel tired. Nobody was there. I checked low, thinking maybe he was crouching for some reason. Nothing. I checked the edge of the frame, as far left and right as the peephole would allow. Empty hall. But I had heard it right on the other side of the door. The operator asked what I saw. I said, "No one." Then above me, directly above me, came another 3 knocks from the floor of the vacant apartment. Same rhythm, the same rhythm as my door. I remember making a sound at that point that I didn't recognize as mine, not a scream, just something small and panicked. The operator was still talking, telling me officers were on the way, asking if I could move somewhere secure. I went into my bedroom and locked that door too, even though I know bedroom doors are basically cardboard and that lock wouldn't stop anybody determined to get in. I sat on the floor between the bed and the wall with my phone in my hand and all the lights off. I don't know why I kept the lights off. Maybe because I didn't want whoever it was knowing exactly where in the apartment I was. Maybe because once your brain goes there, everything gets stupid and primitive really fast. For the next maybe 4 or 5 minutes, I heard nothing. Then I heard a sound from the living room. Very soft, like the tiniest shift of weight near the front door. Not the knob turning, not that. More like somebody leaning against it from the outside. There are sounds you only notice when you're trying not to breathe. Tiny ones. Fabric moving. A shoe adjusting on carpet. The click of your own throat when you swallow. This was one of those sounds. Then came another knock. 1. A few seconds later, 1 more. Then, after a longer pause, 1 final knock. Like whoever was outside no longer wanted to be heard by the whole floor. I texted my downstairs neighbor, a woman named Dana who lived in 2B. We weren't close, but we'd done the normal neighbor thing where you sign for each other's packages sometimes. I just sent, "Are you awake? Something weird is happening. Call police if you hear anything." She replied almost immediately. I heard it too. Thought it was your door. That made me feel better for maybe half a second, because now I had a second person hearing something. Then she sent another message. "There's someone on the landing." I stared at that for a second. I texted back, "What landing?" She wrote, "Between 2 and 3, not moving." I called her right then. She answered in a whisper. She said she had looked through her peephole after hearing knocking upstairs and saw somebody standing on the half landing between our floors, just still facing upward. Not toward her door, not toward the exit. Upward, like he was listening to my floor. I asked if she could see his face. She said no. Hood up. I asked if he was holding anything. She said, "I don't know, his hand was up by his face or something." That hit me in a way I can't really explain, because now it wasn't me half asleep misreading a shadow. She had seen the exact same thing. I asked if he was still there. She didn't answer for a second. Then she said very quietly, "No." I asked where he went. She said she never heard him move. Police got there at 1:32. I know because I checked after. 18 minutes from the first call. By then the building was dead quiet again. 2 officers came up. I heard them knocking and announcing themselves, and I still didn't want to open the door at first. That's how bad my nerves were by that point. I made them say my apartment number twice before I unlocked it. I told them everything. The man, the upstairs scream, the knocking overhead. Dana came out too and told them what she saw from her floor. One of the officers went upstairs with a maintenance guy who lived in the building next door and had keys to the empty unit. The other stayed in the hall with us. I remember the stairwell smelling like cold air and old paint. We all waited. No one said much. Then the officer upstairs called down that the unit was clear. They checked the whole apartment. No one inside. No signs of forced entry. Windows locked. Nobody on the roof. Nobody in the laundry room downstairs. Front entrance still latched. One of them asked if maybe the apartment wasn't actually vacant yet. I said it was. I knew it was. He gave me one of those looks people give you when they're trying not to sound dismissive. Then he said there was one strange thing. In the empty apartment, in the living room directly above mine, there were fresh scuff marks on the floor near the middle of the room, like something heavy had been dragged a short distance. Not a lot, maybe 3 feet. Maintenance said those hadn't been there earlier that day. The officers looked around more after that. Still nothing. No person. No dropped phone. No sign anyone had stayed there. And no good explanation for the scream. They asked if I wanted them to file it as suspicious activity. I said yes. One of them suggested maybe somebody had gotten into the vacant unit earlier, heard movement below, panicked, and left before they got there. That was the closest thing to an explanation anybody offered. It sounded thin even while he was saying it. After they left, Dana asked if I wanted to come sleep on her couch. I almost said yes. I probably should have. Instead, I locked everything again and stayed in my own apartment because some stubborn part of me didn't want to be driven out of it. That was a mistake. I didn't sleep at all. Around 2:11, long after the police had gone, I was sitting in bed with every light on in the apartment when I heard a single knock from above. Just one. I closed my eyes and waited. A minute later, another one. Not random building settling, not pipes. It had weight behind it, intention. I called the non-emergency line this time because I felt stupid calling 911 twice in the same night. They said they'd note it, but unless I heard voices or signs of entry, there wasn't much they could do. I lay there listening until almost 4. At 3:47, I heard footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow, then stopping right outside my door. I got out of bed and stood there in the dark part of my hallway, not close enough to cast a shadow under the door, just listening. No knock this time, no movement either. Whoever it was just stood there. I know how that sounds. I know people can say, well, maybe someone was just pausing outside the wrong unit. No, this wasn't that. When somebody is looking for their keys or checking their phone or figuring out if they're at the right door, you hear it. Tiny sounds, pocket zippers, breathing, a shift in stance. This felt like someone choosing stillness. I waited as long as I could and then looked through the peephole. Nothing. Empty hall again. That was the point where I started doubting myself in a way that was almost worse than being scared. Because I knew what I had heard. But every time I checked, there was nothing there. I went back to bed around 5 without sleeping and just waited for daylight. The next morning, I called the property office the minute they opened and asked them to confirm again that the apartment above me was vacant. They said yes. I asked if anyone had been given access overnight. No. I asked if there were any maintenance checks scheduled. No. Then I asked something I hadn't thought to ask the night before. I asked if anyone had died in that apartment recently. The woman at the office got quiet for a second and said, "Not recently." That word bothered me. I said, "What does that mean?" She said there had been a medical call there the previous fall. Older male tenant. He had lived alone. passed away in the unit before paramedics got there. She said she only knew because the family had taken a while to clear the place out after. I remember just saying, "Okay," because I didn't know what else to say. I'm not telling you that because I think it explains anything. If anything, I think people hear that detail and grab onto it too fast because it sounds like a ready-made answer. I don't have one. What I do know is this. That afternoon, when I got home from work, there was a handwritten note slid halfway under my door. No envelope. No name. Just one sentence on ruled paper. "You should have opened it the first time." I stood there reading it over and over. The handwriting was weirdly ordinary, not jagged or crazy looking. Just normal block letters, like someone trying hard not to be recognizable. I took it straight to the leasing office. They checked the hallway camera on my floor. This is the part that still bothers me most. There was no footage from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. the night before. Not corrupted, not blurry, just missing. The office manager said the system had glitched for that 1 hour on the third floor camera and then resumed recording normally after 2:03. She showed me herself. There I was coming home from work the day before. There was Dana bringing groceries up around 11 p.m. Then nothing. Then at 2:03 a.m., 2 police officers walking down the hall. I asked about the stairwell camera. That one had footage. It showed the officers coming up. It showed Dana stepping out after. It showed a maintenance guy arriving. It did not show anybody going up to my floor between midnight and the police arriving. I asked if maybe the camera missed the angle. The manager said no. Anyone using the stairs would have appeared on it. I asked about the front entrance. Same thing. No one matching that description came in after midnight. At that point, even she looked unsettled. I went back upstairs with the note in my hand and stood outside my apartment for a second before unlocking it. There was another note taped low on the frame of the vacant unit above mine. Not on the door. On the frame. At shin height, where you wouldn't see it unless you were already close. It was the same handwriting, 3 words. I heard you. I didn't go inside my apartment after that. I went straight back down, packed a bag, and stayed with my sister in Derby for 5 nights. The property office let me out of my lease 2 weeks later, which honestly surprised me. Usually places fight you on that. They didn't. They let me go fast. I asked Dana a few days after I moved if anything strange had happened since. She said no. Then she said one more thing. The night after I left, somebody knocked on her door at 1:14 in the morning. 3 times. She didn't open it either. There are a few details here that matter more than the obvious one. The unit above her was vacant. The stairwell camera showed no one coming up. And the third floor camera lost exactly 1 hour, then came back. I wish that was the end of it. For a while it was. Nothing happened for months. I moved into a duplex on the west side, and for a little while I started feeling embarrassed about the whole thing. Embarrassed enough that I almost threw the notes away. I kept them in a kitchen drawer instead. Summer came. Life got normal again. Then in August, Dana called me. We hadn't talked in a while, so seeing her name pop up was strange by itself. When I answered, she didn't do any small talk. She just said, "Do you still have those notes?" I said yes. She was quiet for a second, then said, "I got one." I asked what it said. She told me it was on a sticky note placed on the inside of her car windshield while it was parked in the building lot. 3 words, "Wrong apartment now." That was enough for me. I told her to go to the police and she said she already had. They took a report. I don't know if anything came of it. Probably not. A week later, I drove past the old building once on my lunch break. I don't even know why. Curiosity, I guess. Or maybe I wanted to prove to myself it was just a building. The apartment above mine had blinds up in the front window by then. Somebody new had moved in. As I sat there in my car, a man stepped out onto the small shared landing by the side entrance. Dark jacket, baseball cap, not a hood. Too far away for me to say it was the same person. But he lifted one hand up near his face when he looked in my direction. Just for a second, like blocking part of it. Then he went back inside. I left immediately. I haven't been back. I know there are people who'll hear this and decide it's supernatural because of the empty unit and the missing footage. Other people will decide it's obviously some real person messing with tenants. Maybe someone with access. Maybe someone who knew about the dead tenant. Maybe someone who figured out exactly how to make ordinary apartment sounds feel personal. I don't know. What gets me is the pattern. The same time. The same rhythm. The way it moved between the door and the floor above me like those were somehow the same place. And the fact that whatever was outside my door seemed to know every single time, exactly when I was close enough to hear it. I don't live alone anymore. That part is unrelated mostly. But I still check the peephole differently than I used to. I don't walk right up to it. I come at it from the side first. And if somebody knocks after midnight, I don't care who they claim to be. I don't open the door. I did verify one detail. There was, in fact, a death in the apartment above hers the previous fall. No public report explained the missing hour of hallway footage, and according to the tenant who moved into that unit after she left, the knocking started on their floor in September.